We already said there are 3 levels of muktzeh on Shabbat. There's kli shemelachto leheter, a vessel that is permissible to use. Kli shemelachto leisur, a vessel that you use for things which are not permissible on Shabbat. And then we have real, like strict one, like money. It's not even a vessel, you can't even use it at all. And we said, kli shemelachto leisur, there's one stringency that you're not allowed to use it for. And that's, for example, if you leave it in the sun or in the rain, right? It's in the sun and the rain, you're not allowed to move it.
You're not allowed.
You're not allowed to move. Kli shemelachto leheter, you are allowed to move. That's the only difference between them. But if you need the kli shemelachto leisur, you need it to do something, or the space, or something, then you're allowed to use it. To move it. To move it.
Oh, to move, not if you need to use it.
Even if you need to use it for a permissible thing.
Use for Shabbos.
Use for Shabbos, you find for it, you're allowed to use it. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to see. בהקדמה למשנה הקודמת, in the introduction to the previous Mishnah, הזכרנו, we mentioned, שאפילו כלי שמלאכתו לאיסור, מותר לטלטלו בשבת לצורך גופו. That even if the vessel is prohibited to be used on Shabbos, but you found a use for it, a Shabbos permissible use for it, then you're allowed to use it. כלומר, לשם שימוש המותר בשבת. You found a use for it that is allowed to use it on Shabbat.
How could it be שאפילו שאיסור, אסור לשבת, כלי שמלאכתו לאיסור, איך פתאום זה כן מותר? How is suddenly it's permissible if you find some odd job?
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example.
לא מבין.
Yeah, the famous example is the hammer for nut. Famous example, it gives all the time. You have a nutcracker in the kitchen, right? You can't find it. You can't find your nutcracker. It's gone. So you're allowed to go to the shed, get a hammer, and bang nuts. You're using it for a permissible thing for Shabbat. Okay? But otherwise, you wouldn't be allowed to touch the hammer.
אבל שלא, מההתחלה, זה מה שניסיתי להבין, ואומר לי, לא, אסור.
כלי okay.
That's okay.
משנתנו מונה איפה, our Mishnah is going to count, כלים שמלאכתם לאיסור. We're dealing about vessels that you're not allowed to touch them on Shabbos. מלאכתם לאיסור. והיא באה להדגים לצורך all הדברים, מותר לטלטלה משבת. But if you want to use it for these things, then you'll be allowed to use it. נוטל אדם קורנס, a person is allowed to take a hammer, לפצע בו את האגוזים בשבת, to open with it nuts on שבת. וקרדום, נוטל אדם קרדום, you can take an axe, what do you use an axe for? שמבקעים בו עצים, to cut down woods, לחתוך את הדבלה, you have a big pie, thick pie, you can't find your kitchen knife, so you can take the axe and cut with it the דבלה בשבת. דבלה היינו תאנים דרוסות ודבוקות יחד. It's a fruit cake out of figs. Used to be much bigger and thicker than today's. מגרה, a person is allowed to take מגרה. מגרה is מין מסור, it's a type of a saw. נוטל אדם בשבת, you're allowed to take it on שבת, כדי לגרור בו את הגבינה. In order to cut the cheese.
אבל לגרור זה לגרד. No?
I'm not quite sure. I think ligor means to separate. It doesn't mean exactly לגרד. You cut pieces. I think that's what it means. לחתוך בגבינה יבשה ולחלקה לחלקים. To take it into parts. שעל ידי הפגימות שבמגרה היא נחתכה יפה. Because of it has like the teeth. It cuts good. ואינה מתפוררת. It doesn't become all crumbly. מגרפה, לגרוף בה את הגורגורות. You can take a rake, you know that a rake. You've got a big barrel, and inside the barrel you have all kinds of figs or whatever it is. You're allowed to put with the magrefa, even though it's used for leaves outside, and you're allowed to use it to take figs out of the barrel.
לשם אוכל,
Yeah, תאנים. Permissible on Shabbat. Again, permissible on Shabbat. את הרכת, העשויה לזרות בה תבואה בגורן. I think rechet and mazleg are both tools that you use for farming. One is kilshon, with the three, and the other ones I'm not quite sure. Maybe it has one thing, maybe it has two. כלי בעל שיניים, העשוי להפוך בו את התבן בגורן. You use it to turn over the hay, to pick up the hay. מותר לתלם, you're allowed to take them, בשביל לתת עליו לקטן. To put on it for a small child. It's a strange one, let's see what's talking about. להגיש עליהם בשבת מזונות לילד קטן. You're allowed to put on them food for a small child. Now you think, kilshon, how are you going to put, what's the idea behind it? כגון, מי שלא ינטל ידיו או שידיו טמאות. For example, there's a Kohen. He's in the middle of the field. Right? He wants to eat truma. He needs to eat truma. Now, if the Kohen didn't wash his hand. He didn't wash his hand, but his child did wash his hand. The child of the Kohen. Or maybe the child doesn't need to wash his hand. Another thing. And now he's not allowed to... he's not allowed to... He doesn't want to touch...
He cannot touch it.
He can, but he makes it impure. Yeah. So he doesn't want to touch it because then it's going to become impure.
The kid cannot eat it.
Or the kid...
Or no.
Again, don't say cannot. He cannot eat it in purity. He wants the kid to eat it in purity.
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
Yeah. So what does he do? If he touches the food itself, the food becomes impure. But if he touches a kilshon and he puts it in the end, the food doesn't become impure, and this is the way he's going to feed the small child. והמזונות הם של תרומה, the food becomes תרומה. נוטה לאוכלים ברכת ובמזלג, he doesn't touch the food directly, he takes like a fork, nowadays a long fork, ומניחם לפני הקטן, and gives it to the small child. ויש מפרשים, there are those who explain, להושיט על ידם מזונות לקטן שמעבר לנחל, or to give it to a small child which is across a way or across the river, ונקת התן הקטן, and over here, what do you mean קטן? You can give it to a גדול also. You can give it to a big person. It doesn't have to be a small child. You can give it to...
Somebody need help.
What?
It's somebody need help if you have to give it to him.
Yeah, but it can be your wife. It doesn't have to be katan. She wants to eat, and you have the food on this side. Give it to her. What's the problem? Why did it say katan? It says כדרכו של דבר, because this is usually, that's when you will use it. If it was the wife, she can come and take it on her own. You're not worried. שכן גדול יכול להפסיע את הנחל להביא בעצמו מזונותיו משם. Because a big person, it doesn't mean only a small child. It means that's the usual way that it will happen. That's why it says that way. את הכוש, you can take the kush. What's kush? מות של הפלך שאנשים טובות פה. מסרגה. Very good. It's the thing that women use for weaving or whatever. ואת הקרקר, קרקר is מחט של עץ. It's a needle made out of wood. שבו שובת ההורג את חוטי השתי. That you weave with. שלא יתקפל חוט על חברו. That one string is not going to touch another string. מותר לתלם בשבת. You're allowed also to take these guys in Shabbat, even though they're too... או כדי לדחוב אותם לתוך דבר מאכל. To use it as a fork. כגון לתוך תותים וכדומה. שלא ילכלך ידיו. You don't want your hand to become dirty. מחט של יד. A sewing needle. Even that you're allowed to use for Shabbat. How? מחט קטנה עשויה לתפירה. נוטלה אדם בשבת כדי ליטול בו את הקוץ. You have a thorn in your thing, you want to take it out? Yeah, you can use the מחט for that purpose. Take it out.
מותר להוציא בשבת קוצים.
Yeah. שנדחף בבשרו, שמותר להוציאו בשבת. There's conditions of when you're allowed to, when you're not, but on the conditions that you're allowed to, you will be allowed to use it. ושל סקאים, you're also allowed to take a big needle. There's a needle you use for sewing delicate things like clothing, and there's the needle you use to make sacks. You know a sack?
Yeah.
Sakim. So that's a thick needle, big needle. Even that you're allowed to use. For what? What are you going to use that? מחט גדולה שתופרים בסכים. This is a big needle you make sacks with. מותר לתלה בשבת לפתוח בו את הדלת. You can use it on Shabbat, for example, to open a door. You lost the key, and with you lockpick.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Can you take plier on Shabbos to take the food off the grill?
Very good. Food off the grill. Off the blech. Off the blech. That's right. You don't have the hot thing. That's right. Yeah, very good. That's an example. Very good example. כגון אם עבד לו המפתח. For example, in other words, if you find a permissible use, you can do the use. That's the idea.